I click the links to join the channel here or over at SubScribe. The various other links. Is TikTok super cringe, like left wing Tumblr 2014 or something? Because this is not looking too good. So SJWs are triggered by the voice of Pooh Bear. Oh, you're looking rough. Not calling Trump the vegetarian painter. And we got here, and this is going to sound weird, and tinfoil hat, I get that, is because people are fat and miserable. And instead of focusing on their families and community, they put their energies into parasocial online relationships, where people have extended their adolescence much later, and they're at an age where they should have kids and grandkids and husband or wife and family and whatnot, and they're playing video games and collecting Star Wars dolls. It doesn't bode well for society. If Americans were skinny and in shape, there would be almost no left wing. And I don't know if this is by design or a consequence of their other plans and schemes. So much of these left wingers whining and crying is because I think they're just fat and bored in the first world, and instead of getting some exercise, reading a book, finding a partner of hopefully the opposite sex, and starting a family, they want to extend high school for the next 20 years, so they turn into Taylor Lorenz characters or people who are just addicted to the dopamine of social media affirmation to the point where they think writing stupid Substack articles on Trump is more important than getting married and having a family. We have this current left wing because of untreated mental illness, which the left is suffering from, and they're taking all kinds of drugs to cope, and they go to therapy and write affirmations and whatnot. And maybe it's time to look at the bigger picture and ask what is in society that is creating so many miserable people, which the left can't do because the country has been moving left since post-war and things are just getting worse. So now most left-wingers are miserable people addicted to mood-altering drugs, and they'll never admit that things were better in the past. They have to create this bizarre straw man about how miserable the past was when people had big, happy families all on one income and a stay-at-home mom. People used to have starter homes, and they bought homes and they rented them out. They're rental properties. No, by all means, the 42-year-old single cat lady drinking red wine, benzos, and antidepressants. Yeah, for sure, we're in a better place now. Totally. I mean, that's some pretty deep level gaslighting. But you see it on YouTube comments on the old videos of old cities around the world all the time, where there's a lot of copium. They go, oh, they're only showing you the best parts of the city, and you don't understand how miserable they were back then. And you're looking at like this beautiful Paris or London or even Los Angeles or St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit. You get the idea. Like, yeah, I think you're lying. I think that's cope. You look at LA today and you look at LA back then, and you're like, yeah, clearly this is not progress. The mentally ill, the left wing have a lot of issues with that, and that's not just me saying it. They're happy to brag about it. Trump got elected, and they're not taking it well, which is weird because he was already in office for 4 years, and things were just fine, and it's like they expect us to forget that 4-year period. So what is happening is these SJW kids are bored. They're in the first world, and they need attention. They're desperate to find a way to increase their rank on this Frankfurt School oppression hierarchy, and they found a pretty clever way to do it for someone like that person I showed you. And I got to admire their audacity, because they simply created a new classification fiction that they're members of the BLTQP whatever, and that thus they're members of a marginalized and oppressed folk of two-spirit transferee otherkin. It's real in their mind, but unfortunately not real in reality, which is causing a bit of conflict because we're a little bit more reality focused. And since they're the ones who are writing most of the articles in the digital magazines, they control the narrative that goes out to all the other useful idiot soy people. And now they have standing in this fictional creation instead of just being like this person, this biological male who's 40 pounds over fat and is just would ordinarily be a normal schlubby guy who's just fat and playing video games. It's like all he has to do is just eat less and exercise, and he wouldn't be that normal schlubby guy. But he joins the BLT, and now suddenly he's a marginalized and oppressed victim, and that's his whole, like, that's the crown of thorns he put on himself, and it gets him thing is, it doesn't get the attention. Like, listen, if you're a good looking, no matter the sex, you're good looking, skinny, and young, and suddenly you do this kind of stuff to get attention. When you're young for a while, you're going to get attention. But this kind of peaked in 2015. And if you're fat and you're trying to do this kind of stuff, it's like you're still going to be fat. Like rock is cock, optics, beautiful people attract beautiful people, kind of thing. But all the like it's this pathway for this person, or they just eat less and exercise and go down that other pathway. But in his mind, this is the softer, gentler path. And they also have a lot of infighting, because it used to be that gays were at the top, and then the trans came along and they took first place, and then the other kids saw this and they wanted attention, but they didn't want to take hormones and cut body parts off, which is a wise decision. I mean, if you can grift from the left wing and you're on the left wing, go for it, all without, having to, if you're having to have sex with the same sex type of stuff. Because once they allow emotional based arguments, then reality is out the window. And right now we're at the stage where they accept people plain pretend, which is great, accelerate it. As I can say this as a two-spirit deerkin myself, I feel, and then it's that I feel statement that we hear so much of nowadays. And it's weird because your feelings on an objective situation don't add anything probative or relevant to the argument. They only mention it to manipulate the listeners. And none of those modifiers matter, especially your feelings. Like, what is your actual argument? And people do this with man on the street interviews, where people talk about feeling safe in some areas, and the reporter never corrects them with statistics of crime rates in the area. And it's bizarre because it feels like there's no adults left in not just America, but in the West in general. Like, your feelings on crime rates don't matter so much as the actual crime rates. Like, a teenager could point out the difference between those two things. If you feel safer after some policy change of some corrupt, incompetent politician, but you're actually in increased danger, that should be pointed out. But the media just accepts it, so their entire report is a waste of time. The CNN go into the suburbs and burn down the suburbs, not the inner cities, because we need our weave. And CNN just edited those parts out. It's shocking how dumbed down and fragile America has become. People learn that there's a currency in victimhood. So if you reward behavior, you're going to get more of it. That's part of the reason these kids identify as all this kind of BLT stuff, because now in their minds it can get victimhood points. In their minds, they want to be POCs, because their entire lives the media told them that POCs have status as victims, while the reality is that the people most discriminated against are European Christians, especially blonde hair, blue eyes. But since there's no right-wing media to balance the globalist propaganda, the kids are desperate to achieve that victimhood status of non-Euros, so they just created this BLT stuff. The woman was holding a sign that he deleted that says, if Trump isn't the Austrian corporal, then I am developmentally disabled. And it's coming from a Trump parody, and two, I can't believe that this woman would be so dumb to write something like this. I'm assuming that she's holding a sign, yes, and all you have to do is Photoshop, digitally alter off the words and write in whatever you want. I can't believe someone would be this dumb. But, I'm like, hey, I've been surprised a lot lately. And all of this has kind of turned into a runaway freight train. So now the majority of high school kids are identifying as some sort of marginalized and oppressed bit of nonsense. None of it's real, but it doesn't matter anymore. It's become kind of like the Holland orchid flower bloom. I mean, they have flower markets, but like sometimes like any kind of market, like crypto too, it's like things get massively overinflated. It's totally real and valid until the next fad comes along, which South Park probably won't even be able to imagine, because it's probably going to be schizophrenic victims of negative vibrations from problematic, toxic people, microaggressions, but on a psychic level, the Faraday cage lifestyle. So thus entered the age of the trans trender, and then kids just started saying that they're queer, otherkin, two-spirit, non-binary deer people, so they can label themselves this and put it on their bios, and now they feel they're storming the beaches of Nagasaki with Rosa Parks on their back to save Martin Luther or something. It's all a fiction. They're just bored fat kids looking for attention, and now in their minds they're victims of the highest order, which is the inverse of reality. The only victims are Christians of European descent, especially blonde ones. Yeah, he deleted that post. Oh, I guess the other guy might have blocked me. even the United Nations said that Christians are the most marginalized and oppressed people anyway. So now all these kids identify as some part of the alphabet mafia. And they don't have to actually do anything of gross sexual nature. It involves a lot of lube and probably a mess. They just have to dye their hair and get a nose ring, and in their minds, they're now, they're basically up on a cross. And this is a lead into them losing their minds over absolutely nothing, like an actor holding a stupid left-wing sign up, and the voice actor saying, "Oh, that is indeed a very stupid position to hold." Because I think Ann Coulter pointed out that she said if there's no fat women, protesting would drop to almost zero. For once, I think it's just fat people in general, because you see a lot of, I think it's guys as well, unfortunately. All of America is just way, way too overweight. These left-wingers seem to think that Trump is on, and for the guys, the equivalent is like them drinking Mountain Dew and playing video games or watching the anime and the manga and whatever else, sports ball, video games, and comic books and cartoons, essentially. And it's like these people are in their 20s, and like, yeah, that's for when you're a kids. And I know I just lost half the audience by talking about anime and manga. So they seem to think that Trump is on the level of a Mao, Stalin type of character, which is absurd because they offer no facts to back it up. Their whole life, the TV and mainstream media brainwash them to have one perspective on things, and there's no diversity of thought. There's no nuance to anything. They just have a Pavlovian response that bypasses cognition if presented with trigger words. That one side in a conflict is the bad guys, and that there's no nuance whatsoever because Hollywood told them, and they trust Hollywood because Hollywood told them to trust the TV, and anyone who doesn't trust Hollywood is some crazy conspiracy theorist tinfoil hat. Anyway, in their Hollywood created worldview, the media told them things on the right are bad, fashionableism and that kind of thing, and communism was good or at least neutral because the media is literally Bolsheviks. And the normie, why do you not see any movies about the Bolsheviks or even the Japanese for that matter? World War II type of stuff. And the normie left-wing idiots never notice that they are being brainwashed. Everything they think they know, they learn from Hollywood. Then when you ask them how they think they know something, they'll refer to something in a fictional movie, and they don't understand why we call them useful idiots for bullshies. So this unfortunate-looking protester is holding up a sign that translates into she's developmentally disabled, and the actor, that gentleman, the voice actor, is asking who is disabled. It's just, that was all he said, one simple comment. And the left-wing SJW kids, who in their minds consider themselves the greatest of victims and that the world has to adjust to accommodate them, can't accept reality that people have different opinions and that they're probably wrong because they're young, dumb, and full of cum, and we were all young at one point and stupid. But it just seems like childhood is extending, adolescence is extending so much later for these people. They're just, like, they still have these little dolls on their walls, and they're, 30 or so. The left is not over target. They don't get debanked, fired, or kicked off payment processors or social media. We're over target. They're the useful idiots. All this guy implied was that, no, Trump is not on the level of a wartime leader of a foreign country. To be fair, Trump didn't win any military awards for courage under fire because Trump, Biden, Obama, Clinton all actually avoided going to war. It's the goal of being a war pig is to send your children to fight and bleed and die and lose body parts in foreign wars. Which is weird. It kind of begs the question, why do we fight foreign wars at all? I asked the left and right that for many decades, and never got it. Oh, we gotta like fight them over there. Why don't you just close the borders? Oh, I never thought of that. Yeah, you don't have to fight them at all. Just leave them alone in their country. Let them fight it out. One Pakistan versus another. Don't have to get involved at all. Oh, but no, we got to import them here so they fight here in the West. Don't have to do that either. It's weird that you think you would. Anyway, no, Trump is not on the level of a Hirohito, de Gaulle, Mussolini, Roosevelt, Hitler, Stalin, or Churchill. And these left-wing coping and seething kids know the comparison is stupid and factually inaccurate, but for someone in Hollywood to point it out is not allowed. So we're at the point of the truth is offensive to these fragile participation trophy generation snowflakes. How dare you imply that Trump is just some normal guy, even if history has shown that he is, because, as I said, he was in office from 16 to 20. which was only a few years ago. It wasn't a lifetime ago. It's bizarre that they just forgot that 4 year. The truth triggers them. So they whine and cry and say he's destroyed his legacy, except he hasn't. He has a body of work behind him as a voice actor for dozens of characters, and in a few years the soy boys will be gone and Pooh Bear will remain. I'm all about not Eeyore. Piglet. Piglet was the cute one. Anyway, listening to these feminine men talk like, oh, that's hateful rhetoric, and yikes my god, that's ableist language and istophobic. Like, man up. Men don't talk like that. You can be masculine or feminine, but you don't speak like that. Just speak normally. You're just regurgitating Marxist doublespeak. This is all just Frankfurt manipulative Saul Alinsky techniques. You can be gay or straight, but adults, men or women, should not speak like that. But listening to them is the worst part of the soft men create the hard times. And it is like the men, it's like this, all this decision stuff is on men one way or another, because if you refrain from making a decision, then you're making a decision, and men allowing women in positions of decision making is like, it's still a male decision to hand over the reins of power to people who should not hold those reins. And I know I'm not alone in that. Like, different people are, men and women are suited to different purposes, and that's also just the way of the world, because of the biological necessity of 9 months to take care of a kid, and then years after that. Anyway, the hard times are actually not here yet, but they're very much on the horizon. And during them, the soy boys who need trigger warnings and speak in the California upspeak are going to disappear. There are not going to be any pronouns or trans rainbow cancel clubs. All this stupid stuff is only possible in the first world with these bored kids who are cut off from their blood tribe, their history, their people's gods, their ceremony and tradition. I mean, like, the Disney Marvelification is Disney movies are a derivative of the Disney Marvel comic books, which are derivative of mostly European mythology. And so we would have been much better off if the comic books were just more nationalist based on historical mythology and not their kind of globalist interpretation of them. And there's marketing reasons and whatnot. But that started things on a very bad path, to the point where you have now Valhalla with non-Europeans in it. It's like, well, none of this makes sense, but you have to accept this schizophrenic framing of non-Europeans in a European pantheon, or Snow White. It's like, it's a was it a German folktale? Nobody in Snow White is actually European. None of this makes sense. Or the Little Mermaid. It's like, yeah, they're doing, obviously this is part of the humiliation ritual of a conquered people. I mean, we're, after the war, hopefully people can get back into ceremony and tradition. You're seeing a little bit of that now. There's been, like, this Satire movement is growing a little bit. People are kind of getting more into paganism, ethno-nationalism, and people are getting very tribal as external stressors are developing. They're looking around like, oh, this is all just plastic garbage, spiritually plastic. And in a lot of cases, it's made in China, pop culture, one of those called the Funko dolls, all the plastic dolls that people have on their wall, all that, the made in China collectibles. It's like just so much garbage, and none of it's real. It's like, that's a Marvel interpretation, a Disney Marvel interpretation of actual European mythology. It's like, just go study the source material. Start, I don't know, clubs that talk about. I mean, there are groups out there that are growing. Anyway, TV and the modern TV equivalent has severed the ties with these ancestral connections, and like, this is very much the time to get those things back. That was the intent, to create the Bolshevik found family, where your morals and worldview are shaped by the demons in Hollywood and the government controlled schools, and they think they're raging against the machine, to the point where these blue-haired soy boys care what an actor thinks. They care enough to virtue signal. And a lot of stuff with this, the cartoons and the comics and things like this. And you see it's a left-wing, the kids, everyone reads comics and watches cartoons. But these left-wing kids who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and they're still fascinated with this kind of things from their childhood, that's a left-wing thing. Where the girls at the Mary Sue are in their 30s, and they're all about, like, all this like childhood obsession, and you go get married and have kids, and all this stuff will vanish because it's just not important. It's a weird displacement activity for way too many people. You shouldn't care about it. I mean, if anything, you should agree with the actor. You shouldn't care what he says on Trump. It's like you should laugh at him, but it's like one transgression and they have to cancel him. I mean, he's probably in his 70s. He's already probably retired. He's done. He doesn't care about all this kind of stuff anyway. But he's deleted the tweet, which is like you should never delete stuff, never back down from things. Just move on from it and let the left wingers show the world like their true selves, their mask off. They're just miserable people. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks everyone over at Throne and SubScribeStar, and I'll see you guys all next episode.